Hiring managers of Reddit, what is the worst answer an interviewee gave you? Why'd you move from Florida to Texas? There were too many Jews in Florida. What is your biggest weakness? Sometimes I get really angry and cannot control myself. It's gotten me in legal trouble in the past. What was your reason for leaving your previous employer? Cause I hate retail. You do realize that a grocery store is also retail, right? Yeah. I was being interviewed for a retail job at Yankee Candle. He asked, what's your favorite scent for a candle? I said, I prefer unscented candles. I didn't get the job. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Probably using my phone as a mirror. This was when the Nokia brick was the current cell phone. I would have hired him if I knew he could predict the future, but at the time that seemed stupid. People, please stop posting emails. It is a violation of Rule 4, and a lot of you are doing it. Here is the basics of the rule for the lazy. More than posting or seeking any identifying personal information, real or fake, will result in a ban without a prior warning. This includes for yourself or other people, and refers to, but is not limited to, names, phone numbers, email addresses, Facebook or other social media accounts. This one girl, interviewing for a 6-figure senior project management role, indicated that she had problems with her previous boss. Sensing a possible red flag, I casually asked what was the nature of the problem. She said basically he wanted me to come into the office like every ducking day. While I was digesting this, she followed up with, would you want me to work every day too? I said, well, the job is full time, Monday to Friday. So yes, I guess we would. She thankfully said, then I don't think this job is for me. I was looking around for the cameras. I was sure it was a practical joke, but it wasn't. Why do you want to work here? So my girlfriend will stop itching about me not having a job. I always like resumes that are nearly spotless, but have incredibly bad emails. This is unprofessional, and we do notice. Seriously. Do you mind taking a drug test? Oh, I can tell you I'll pass. Amazing. But I have to do it. Paperwork and all. Proceeds to discuss the best way to grow, treat, and smoke weed. Yeah, well, I'll call you when I make my decision. I sat in on an interview. This is a career type position. Huge, professional company. Everything goes well. And the last question, so where would you like to see yourself in the future with this company? Oh no, I think this just sounds like a chill job for the summer. Interviewed a guy this week who showed up high AF and stank of booze. Knew he wasn't suitable for the position, based on the showing up high and booze scent part, but had to go through the interview motions. For reasons of pleasantries. Asked him what his desired hourly wage was. He said mornings. After very vague and empty answers to the standard questions, the guy was clearly not making an effort. So I asked him, do you really want a job here? He looked me straight in the eye and said, no. My mom forced me to put in all these applications and answered the phone when you called, so I had to come in. I'm a retail manager and recently an applicant answered the standard why do you want to work here? With, my girl is pregnant and it's easier than McDonald's. When I asked him to elaborate on that, he said that while working at McDonald's he was fired for sleeping while on the clock, and he knows he could get away with that at our store. I overheard an interview where I work and just about every answer was I don't know. Some bloke told me about how he nicked stuff from the last place he worked because they wouldn't promote him. Myself, what can you tell me about? Interviewee, hold on. They're talking about my boy on the tube right now. Work at a bar running the kitchen. This guy cut me off to watch SportsCenter. Did not hire. Oh geez. I seriously have tons of these. How would you rate your conflict resolution skills? Oh, I'd say I get conflicts resolved pretty easily. I used to be a waitress, and that's why I seriously can't ducking stand people. Full stop. What? I'm not a hiring manager, but I totally blew an interview at a Danish company. The guy interviewing me had an accent that sounded just like Goldmember in Austin Powers. All I could think of was the line where he says, yes, I have a Dutch accent and I'm Dutch. Isn't that weird? I couldn't focus and could barely keep from laughing. I had no good answers for him and his 3 helpers. I was in the middle of an interview when one of the candidates pulled a book out of his backpack and just started reading it. It took me a second to shake off what he was doing, it was just so out of the blue. I got frustrated and asked him, "What the hell are you doing?" He just looks at me deadpan and asks if you're in a truck traveling at the speed of light. Then, "You turn your lights on. Would anything happen?" I just said I don't know and he stood up and said, "Fine. I don't want to work for you anyway," and walked out. I had no idea what the hell to say to my colleague, so we just went on with the day like nothing else. Never forgot it though. We were hiring for an IT support position at a large organization. The entire interview panel is in suits and every applicant up until now had been the same. The guy turns up in jeans and a hoodie. That might fly for smaller startups or whatever, but it's a huge strike against him here. Anyway, we get into the interview and about halfway and he takes his hoodie off and he has this graphic t-shirt on with a big wee leaf on it. We had very strict questions we can and can't ask people in an interview and no one knows what to do. So we go through the rest of the interview, but his shirt is this huge elephant in the room no one is acknowledging. We get to the end of the interview and as we are about to send him off, my team lead blurts out, "Can you explain what your shirt is about?" He looks down at it and goes, "Oh, it's laundry day." Interviewee snapped at me and then said, "Sorry, I said that, it's just that you remind me of my husband. Lol." Interview for a job in the communication and leadership department. What's your biggest weakness? Communication. Me. Why are you leaving your current position? Him. All of my coworkers are stupid. I hate being a manager. My direct report is so incompetent. I reported him to the CEO, but he hasn't gotten fired yet. This was for a supervisor position on a highly collaborative team. I received a job offer that I was certainly taking as I was preparing to go to a different interview, literally sitting in the parking lot to kill time. I went to the interview and he asked, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" as one of the first questions. Not really giving her it, I said something like tearing up some sweet fresh Colorado powder on a weekly basis. I figured this was basically saying there's no way I intended to stay there long term because the company was on the East Coast. Turns out the interviewer was an avid skier and we talked skiing for the next 15 minutes. Got that offer too. Had a guy show up 15 minutes late for an interview. The department I was hiring for was desperate for help. So I asked him if I sat him for an interview if he could make me want to hire him. He said yes. During the interview, I asked why he was late. He said he couldn't get a ride from his ducking girlfriend. I asked him if that was a common problem. Yeah. She likes to smoke a lot and forgets when you ask her it. I informed him that the interview was over and we were not going to be hiring him. He stands up and says, "I was late cause of that itch. You can't hold that against me." Then he storms out, muttering various curses and sexist slurs under his breath. Me. Why do you want to leave your current position? Her. I don't like waitressing. The customers are annoying. I don't want to work nights or weekends. Me. This is retail and our interview is over. Thank you for coming in. Former HR told me he was interviewing a girl for a management position and when he asked what her management style was like, she replied, "I keep my game 100 all the time. White girl." Oh, I almost forgot the time that I was interviewing a girl and her boyfriend called the store and asked to speak to her. I asked him if it was an emergency and he said, yeah, she said she had an interview there and I'm making sure that's where she really is. Girl seemed really nice but nope. Not a hiring manager. Just HR. But there was an absolutely terrible interviewee. She came in fine and started out okay. But then I went to look at something on her CV and she went, "I'd like you to look at me when you're talking to me." Then, halfway through the interview she said, "Yeah, I guess I've always been a quick learner." I jumped 2 years. Graduating really quick. Completely forgetting that she had actually written the dates of her graduation on her CV. Other than that, we just get the odd drunk high person in on an interview. I don't know why some people come in while under the influence of some drug. But there was one guy who told me he did it for the nerves. He was staggering when he showed up and kept losing the red thread while we were talking. Not sure if his nerves were calm, but his speech was nonsensical. I've never worked in a restaurant but I'm Italian. Italian restaurant hiring. I know there are people out here that intentionally bomb interviews for unemployment insurance purposes. Is there anything that will prevent you from getting to work on time? I smoke medical marijuana for my back problems so I could be late or may not be able to come in on some days. This was in a state where medical marijuana was illegal at that time. Can you tell me about a time you went above and beyond for a customer? Well, the store was about to close and this lady came up to me looking for a gift for a 3-year-old boy, but she didn't know what he liked or anything, and my shift was about to end, so I got Karen to help her instead. I worked where HR had a stranglehold on the process of bringing in candidates. Often they sent ones with zero experience or aptitude for the position. One of the best examples. So tell me, what experience do you have that qualifies you for the senior healthcare systems analyst position? I worked at 7-11. In IT? No. Night shift at the one on Fremont Boulevard. I was a young retail manager. I'm in my 20s. I interviewed a woman in her 40s. I introduced myself and shook her hand. Who's your boss? She started with. I replied. I am the store manager. She says. You're young enough to be my son. We hadn't even sat down yet. I also usually asked interviewees what superpower they would want if they could have any. One kid responded with go invisible. It'd be nice to sneak around and watch people. Really weird answer and raised some red flags in retail. Although one girl answered with to reach into my pocket and always have exact change. Best answer I ever heard. I once had a guy in his mid-30s. About 10 years of experience. Software engineering. The first real question in our interview process is just having the candidate pick something they've done that they enjoyed, think is impressive, and tell us about it. So, we ask him to do it, and he's like meh. So I picked the most recent item on his resume. A job he's been at for 2 years. What do you do there? Oh, it's a job for a monkey. I basically just mediate between 2 teams. I'm not really sure why that's even a role. Okay, I guess that's why you're leaving. So, what about this next one? Oh, that was truly moronic. They just let thang launches into a seriously unimpressive description more than, and on, and on. In 10 years, he hasn't had a single role he deems worthwhile, and worse than that, he's doing a great job convincing us of that fact. Now, as an interviewer, what am I supposed to think? That you only landed jobs because of some ancient Egyptian curse or something? We didn't end it there just in case he was a hidden gem of technical skills. He wasn't. But that's easily the worst I've ever seen anyone do at that question. If you could have any job in the world, what would you do? Not have to work or have a job. What do you like to do for fun? A lot of my team like golfing. Well, I'm really into zombies. Me. What does this bullet point on your resume mean? I haven't heard that term before. Him. Oh. I'm not sure. My wife wrote it. Why are you leaving your job as a store manager at the Arthur place? Oh, I'm not. You do know this is a full-time position, right? But I figured that I could run both. I don't need to be here for the full day, do I? Not a hiring manager, but I discussed that with the one on my company. This one guy came to interview for a job as a software developer. According to his resume, he had a master's in computer science, came to simple test, and the guy didn't know the modulus operator. Really, dude? I wasn't the hiring manager but the one getting interviewed by the owner. He set me up for failure. I had to drive out of town on my own expense to the interview. It was a tech sales position. The owner asked me if the company advertised 24/7 support, which I replied yes. He told me I was wrong right away. It was on their homepage and it was in the lobby of the office stating 24/7 support. Next question he asked me was to name 10 of his clients. His clients weren't publicly listed. When I told him that I couldn't name them, he told me I wasn't fit for the job because I didn't answer his questions correctly. So yeah, duck that guy. Had a great one last week, hiring for an entry-level tech support position. It's entry level, so I don't expect the candidates to know much. But still, this guy is a recent grad from a technical program, and lists pretty much every flavor of Windows in his IT skills. Okay, so I ask him what he feels like is the best operating system for corporate desktop PCs. He looks at me like I've asked him for the recipe for Coca-Cola, stutters for a moment, and then informs me that he really loves the OS on his new iPhone 7. Yeah, it's way better than the old one. So this is probably his choice, the iPhone OS, for desktop PCs. He did not get a second interview. Not an interviewee question, but it's astonishing how many emails we get that just say something like "give me a job," and that's it. My sister had an interview at a restaurant. The manager asked her what she does when she gets slammed. She thought he meant slammed as in drunk and trying to look responsible, said, "I walk home." He meant slammed as in busy. My sister was humiliated and also, rightly, did not get the job. I interviewed for a company selling cable packages. Interviewer: do you watch TV? Me: no, I haven't watched TV in 15 years. Interviewer: why don't you watch TV? Me: I don't care about Kim Kardashian's stupid fat baby. Interviewer doesn't respond. She writes something down. Yo, I didn't get that job. Not myself, but my boss interviewed someone. He asked them what their last job was. I worked at less than a competitor more than for 3 weeks. Oh, that's interesting. Why such a short time? Expecting to hear how terrible it was. They're known for being terrible to their employees. Oh, I got fired in training because I didn't meet performance standards. Technical question with a short, exact answer. Like, what is the difference between override and overload? Long drawn out wandering response that doesn't really answer my question and further makes me regret asking you any questions. Which, as an interviewer, gets us going in a really bad direction if I really want this interview over. AKA, it's okay to say I don't know. In fact, I have questions designed to get you to say I don't know, because I need a person who knows when to ask for help. Coding isn't easy. Specs can be drawn up wrong or incomplete, and we all make mistakes and don't know everything. It isn't a trap. Say I don't know if you don't know. This isn't quite an answer to an interview question, but I feel it's related. I tried to give an internship to someone in Washington, D.C. It was during a time when there was lots of ISIS chatter fear on television. I knew the girl from a friend and she was qualified for the post. She just had to show up to her interview with myself and my superior to prove she was normal. At 3 AM the morning of the interview, she sent me a message saying that she was too afraid to get on the train to go to the interview because she thought ISIS was going to blow it up. 2 weeks later she calls me asking if she could reschedule and if she could take me out to dinner to apologize she didn't get the job. I'm not personally a hiring manager, but I have relevant story. A long time ago at an old job, we had a VP who was controversial for being generally incompetent and antisocial. Everyone's interactions with consisted of persistent low-level sexual harassment. Impossible to respect the guy. One day he is fired, much to everyone's surprise, since we figured that if he managed to stick around as long as he had then he would never leave. We later heard about the last straw for the company president. The company was hiring for a market research type role, and this dullard VP always did the first round interviews. Second round and a candidate is invited back, on the VP's recommendation to the pres. The president goes into the second interview with this candidate, supposedly vetted by the VP and inches away from a job offer, and ask the basic question of why he want to work for this company. Presumably the VP asked this right off the bat the week before. Really, I just want to get bartending off my resume. An interviewee once asked me if people are allowed to date other employees. I asked if they knew anyone at the company. They said no. I had one person basically just rail their old job for about 5 minutes during an interview. We cut the interview pretty short because there wasn't a chance we were hiring this person. I'm not a hiring manager, but I am a supervisor that sits in on interviews. The worst answer ever came when my boss asked the question, "Where do you see yourself in 1 year with this company?" Her answer was, "Honestly, I won't be here. This is just a stepping stone so I can get a real job." Yeah, we didn't hire her. Last year I worked on a junior enterprise, and one of the questions we made to new candidates was something on the ballpark of "tell us one time you took responsibility even though it was not your job." The guy legit started talking about his parents' divorce, how he felt it was his fault, and started crying on the interview. I was lucky there was also a psychologist doing the interview with me. Otherwise I would have no idea what to do at all. Hire dispatchers for 911. We have a panel interview with 3 dispatchers, a supervisor, and the hiring manager. It's pretty standard to go back over a document that is required by state law called a personal history statement. You have to disclose all your criminal family employment history. One of the questions asks when you last used marijuana. His answer in his PHS was around 5 years ago. Fine, don't care. His answer to the panel was something along the lines of, I was real nervous about this interview so I smoked one up in the car before I came in. All at once everyone turns to look at me like WFT. He didn't get the job. And yes, I know everyone uses weed. And yes, I'm all on board for legalizing it. However, it is pretty poor decision making to smoke outright before an interview at a police department. I wouldn't do a few shots right before the interview.